wearing my original hoodie. It was a I still have it. It's a burgundy My God Is Undefeated hoodie. So I was emotional. I was hurt. Called some people. So I literally texted 7 of my friends, just pray. Don't know what's going on. So I walk into the computer science office. Her name is Miss Wendy Smith. She's like our administrator because all of our teachers there were foreign. So she black. She looked out for the homies.
Mhm.
Side note, when I tell you she signed so many override forms so I can graduate when I graduated, shout out to her. Um, so I was crying. She's like, Steven. She basically told me like, shut up. It's like, be quiet. I was like, what? She's like, look at your hoodie. I looked down at my hoodie. My hoodie said, My God is undefeated. She was like, Steven, how are you wearing this hoodie? But you're
Mhm.
over here shook on what's gonna happen.
Growing up in church, a lot of times when our friends are out and about partying at the clubs, we are stuck in the house or we're stuck in teen summits, teen nights in church. And sometimes when we go to college, we tend to wild out. Well, today's guest, Stephen Michael Thompson Jr., little brother of mine, he tried a little bit for it, but he said that just wasn't his scene. He always realized that God had a purpose for him and he let him use him. And that's a dangerous statement, as you will find out when you listen to this podcast. Steven and I worked together at Fox Sports 1340. He was somebody I recruited, and he was a computer major, but he did a lot with multimedia. And even though he works in IT professionally, he has utilized a lot of what he's learned working in media to for his business, SZN Media. So, ladies and gentlemen, sit back as you will get a good in-depth conversation about Steve's journey and how he had to listen and trust in God even in his darkest hours. So, ladies and gentlemen, here's my conversation with Stephen Michael Thompson Jr. All right, ladies and gentlemen, on this episode today, I have my, by blood, we don't know each other. We there's no bloodline as far as we know, but he might as well be my little brother. What I do, he do. And what my goal always is to help push him to do it even better, from videography, photography, social media. One thing I don't do what he does, and that is the IT world, which we'll get into. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the one, the only Stephen Michael Thompson Jr.
The season is here. How are you, Brian?
I'm good, man. How you feeling?
Pretty good. I gotta open up, keep it on brand. That's one of the things you taught me.
Yeah, I had to make sure I bring the intro right, because if I didn't, you would be like, "Wait a minute now."
Yeah,
First and
re-record this.
first and foremost, man, how you feeling?
Man, I'm feeling good. Despite being, I guess, month number 13 of the pandemic, very blessed, very excited for some things that I'm doing. Just happy to be breathing and alive, to be completely real with you.
Yeah, I definitely understand that, man. It's I tell you the truth. It's been one of those years from I mean, now as we're recording, we're really in a full year of the pandemic. And it's crazy because I remember thinking, okay, maybe this will last for about a couple months and then things will kind of go back to normal. I don't think anybody could have expected it to be like this.
Yeah, I think it sucks for me. I graduated. We talk about that. I graduated in the middle of a pandemic. It's just like I can't have my freedom, and I have freedom, but I don't have it. But like kind of seeing how everything has changed from the last year. I feel like especially in the DMV. At first, I remember when it started, I was at Morgan. I was We were a couple blocks away from me. I was still in Baltimore. My parents were like, "Well, you can stay." I remember having a conversation. I remember going back home before I moved, and I moved. I'm like, it's still going on. Like I'm over here doing a lot of these things, and everything's still like the same. Despite it's even weird. I know we kind of saw a lot of people was out during the summertime, and I was like, yeah, this ain't going. Once people get home in the fall, kind of gets cold outside, it's going to hit people hard, and unfortunately, it still is. So, praying for anybody who's lost anybody. I know a few people who's even gotten COVID or unfortunately passed away, but I think just shows the selfishness of this country. I think just sit down somewhere, put on a mask, double mask it, But I don't know, Brian. It's just between the corporate world, even just trying to go to the grocery store, everybody is still, I'm not saying in a shock, but they're just still just trying to move on like everything is just whatever. I think a lot of us have just gotten used to it, but we're not like, really asking that question. Okay, cool. What's next? How can we get out of this? So it's very, very interesting. I would cut a promo. Oh, if you're not a wrestling fan, that is an interview in wrestling. But I ain't gonna cut it. I ain't gonna cut a promo on COVID because
Oh man, yeah, that's a uh time right there. But when we met, you were a freshman at the Morgan State
illustrious.
University. And at the time, I was working with Fox Sports 1340. Shout out to Glenn Thomas. And I remember, we had put it out there on social media. We always had like ongoing, by this time, were somewhat in our stride. We always had information out there like, hey, if you want to join, come on board. If you want to, get some experience. And I specifically remember you applying, and one of the things that stuck out to me was you was a wrestling fan, but not only was you a WWE fan like most of us, you was a heavy into New Japan and PWG. For those who don't know, those are other wrestling organizations. Um, you had a desire and an interest in the media world. Talk about that. What led you to pursue media as a, I'm going to say, additional knowledge? Because we all know, for those who do not know, you was a computer science major, you have a BS in computer science. But in this situation, you wanted to get some media knowledge. What led to that?
So yeah, I did have a degree in computer science, finished. But I think the summer before I went to Morgan, it was a website called FreshU HBCU. So the whole premise of that platform, I met a couple of friends on that platform. The whole premise of that platform was to have students from certain HBCUs write about your time in the HBCU. I was like, okay, this is fun. I think before that, I just loved sports. I think it really started with sports and wrestling. I was always around media, and even in my family, I was always around creative people, but I just didn't really apply it. I think it kind of started slowly to build up in high school and SGA when I started a Twitter page. I was doing videos. I'm very proficient in Photoshop. I remember like all 4 years of high school, I was always in Canva, but I didn't know what I was doing. God was kind of doing some things. So kind of going to Morgan, I stepped into the first year HBCU. Then I joined the embassy spokesman. Now I was only in there for less than a year, but I joined the spokesman. Quick sit. Shout out to Traymon, Ben, Malik, Devin. Traymon was the first ever person who told me, yeah, go to the bookstore. Mind you, I was a broke college student. Go to the bookstore, buy an AP style book. I'm like, what is an AP style book? Because I remember when I first started to write for the spokesman, Brian, my first couple of stories, the days to edit my stories, I did not come to the newsroom. I was scared. I remember Benjamin. I was scared because I remember the first time I got a story edited. I was like, wow, I'm really like terrible at this. I might not make it here. And that was also a time when, pasta syndrome was starting, but it didn't get as bad. But that was a time where a lot of people's like, so you're a computer science major and you're doing media? We'll talk more about that. So got into that. I did a full year. Obviously, I didn't write many stories. I wrote a few stories, but I think that was the first year where I started to cover athletic events. And of course, I think my first year covering athletic events, I was cheering. I was doing stuff I was not supposed to be doing with the media pads, but I'm home. I'm on Morgan, so they wasn't really tripping. But I think my first year, my freshman year, I really got involved with more the sports journalism side. Before we met, it was mostly sports. But once we met, now side note, when did I first meet you? Was it an NEBJ meeting or was it at the football game?
No, well, in person, it was. Dang, that's a good question. I want to say homecoming.
I actually have it on my wall. So on my temporary place I'm at right now, I have all my media passes up.
Yeah.
So it was, forgot the date, but it's October 2017. I remember you was walking up. I saw
No, it
Glenn.
would have been 16. Oh no, you know what? It was 17. I'm tripping because I was wait, that's a good question. Because I know I think I went to homecoming and I got on the field, even though I wasn't with Fox anymore. But I thought it was okay, yeah. What was your freshman year?
It was 16.
Okay. It was one of them.
It was there. So I remember I met you. You passed me a card. And at that time, I was shifting. So it was a funny little story. So I learned about a rule where in sports media, you can't cover a game for two media sources. You can't do that. So I remember Tremont texting me on a Sunday. He was like, "Yeah, it's a game coming up. What are you gonna do?" Because that's when I think I first started working with Fox. And I think once I met you and once I left the newspaper just to go independent and kind of go solo, that's when everything shifted for me.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I didn't know that's how it happened.
It just I was like Hogan. No, I wasn't a Hogan. It was more, I just jumped from one brand to another. I just stuck with that brand. So shout out to the MSG spokesman. That was my second ever site I wrote on. Didn't really stay as long. But shout out to the SCJC newsroom.
Real quick, a word from one of our sponsors. A new year brings a new beginning. For all my listeners that own a business, I want to tell you about FedEx Office. If you are just starting or have been running your company for generations, FedEx Office gives you the best way to print marketing materials, posters, signage, graphics, and so much more. With FedEx, creating, editing, and saving and ordering are fast and easy. We are teaming up with FedEx and Pago to bring our listeners 30% off your next order of $100 or more at pago.co/FedEx. That's pago.co/FedEx for 30% off your next order. FedEx, the world on time. Yeah, now your time at Fox Sports, because you was busy. One of the moments that I knew you were dependable, you might know where I'm going with this one.
Oh man, you WrestleMania night.
Yep, WrestleMania 33. And we had somebody on the team. They got a little excited on his social media handle and wrote some disparaging language. I said, hey, you can't do that. We're still connected to a radio station, so there could be some FCC implications. You never know. So I remember sitting there, and it's doing the Hardy Boys and their big return, and that's what made the guy mark out. And because you could be a fan, but I always like to run social media very lax. Be a fan, but still be professional. And I remember you took over, and I was like, I ain't even had to worry about it for the rest of the night, man. Just tell me. I don't think we ever discussed. So you get the text. What are you doing? I mean, obviously watching WrestleMania, but like, what was your thought process? Was you upset? Like, I gotta work now?
Where was I? What year was that WrestleMania? Was that 17?
2017.
All right, so I was in my dorm room eating some Stokos. If you're from Baltimore, you know what I'm talking about. My broke self, my broke undergrad self. And I was obviously on Twitter.
Stoko's is still good for the rich.
Listen, Stokos and Yorks got me through a lot of nights in college. Okay. But I was eating some Stokos, and at that time I was with Fox, and I remember I was switching from the personal, you switch from your personal account to the business account. I was doing that a lot, so I had that on my phone. So I was on my personal account. I think I was in the middle of a tweet, and you called me. I'm saying, okay, cool. Saw me probably give some rules. Says you was at that WrestleMania. You and Glenn was there.
Yeah.
I think only obviously, other people like Ashley may be watching it, but me and the guy that he's talking about, we was kind of on duty. So you called me. I was like, I got it. And I think now their match was when it first got dark outside. So it wasn't really that late in the show. So I think
Not at
at the
all.
age, I forgot what age I was, but I think being a freshman, I was literally, I think I live tweeted WrestleMania for the last 2 to 3 hours. And that was also the night that Roman and Undertaker, Taker stunking up. So yeah. So but if I could put Fox at retrospective, I'm very thankful, you brought me to Fox because at that time, Cody and Mike had a podcast. I live tweeted for their podcast. I think I was on one of their shows. Kelsey Nicole, we love Kelsey Nicole Nelson. Her former podcast, I was their official Twitter guy. So I was live tweeting podcasts. I was actually on a podcast for the first time. I even covered the Nationals for a couple months. I was writing wrestling columns. So I was really real world, real life experience that's credible on a resume. And I was only a freshman and sophomore. Quick story about that. When I first went fully Fox, my SID, which I'm going to talk about later, my sophomore year, literally, he gave me the most crap ever. Because he's like, who was Fox 1340? Who are they? They never come here. I remember the first time I asked for a media pass a couple times, he just stared at me. He was like, well, I'll give you an update. But I think I learned that I had to prove myself. Even at Fox, I was with, you, Ashley, Kelsey. I was with a lot of amazing people, and I was some young guy who wasn't even studying this. I think that's something I faced early on. A lot of people was like, oh, you're a blogger. Oh, you don't know journalism. I was like, well, I see y'all studying these classes, but I don't see no credentials on your wall or your content. I don't see, I'm gonna cut a promo, but I didn't see. But I had people like Traymon, Benjamin Devin, Isaiah George. I had people in my corner saying, hey, Steven, if you just stay consistent, you got this. And I remember a point where my sophomore year, I remember I was in a group chat. I was like, hey guys, should I switch my major to multimedia journalism? I'm happy I didn't, because when I graduated, the pandemic was happening. But I think going to that point, I think I'm very grateful for Fox 1340 because everything I'm doing right now, outside of graphics and maybe some website work, I was pretty much doing everything at a young age. I think I'm the type of person where I don't need a class, just give me the experience. Throw me in the fire.
Right. Yeah, and that's what we was able to do. Obviously I look back at that time and there's a lot of things I would change, but I will say, I look at the team and quite a few of them have been guest on here. You brought Kelsey Nicole Nelson. She was obviously the first guest. Ashley Nicole Baker. She was the fourth guest on here. But then there was also Josh Vincent. He was here. Who else? Devin Ashby. He spent some time there at Fox. So there was quite a few people, and I know I'm gonna look back and people when I listen to this, I'm like, oh man, I forgot about this person, I forgot about that person. But one of the things that we was Brandon Williams, he was the third person, and Brandon was the same way. Like it was almost like everything that you was doing, Brandon had done. He had showed that hey, you could take somebody who's hungry. He wasn't a freshman, he was a sophomore, get ready to go in the junior year and transfer to Bowie, but he learned how to cover stuff early. And here you come, you could have either sank and then was like, okay, well, Brandon was just different, or you could swim, which you did. And you know what the best part I have no problem saying. Yeah, some people who was more concerned about going to the stadium, taking a picture, going flashing their credentials online, but they wasn't concerned about creating the content. They was concerned about their brands, And I remember when we had brought people on, I was like, hey man, can you tweet from the handle? Like you got the keys, tweet from the handle, and they was okay, and wouldn't do it. But you was always that team player, like you just mentioned. That stuff you can't put a price on. Jumping on other people's podcasts, not saying, hey, I'm here live tweeting, but no, just live tweeting it just so that it can give some consistency. So that's one of the things that I had always had appreciated about you. I gotta ask you this: how in the world did you balance studying computer science and doing media while you was at Morgan State? Because one of the things I want people to understand about Morgan State University, it's a HBCU, a proud HBCU, but it's not easy. Don't get it twisted. A lot of times, some people may believe that it's not a hard university. People even think community college is easy. It's not. They think it's
any
13th
college class can
grade.
humble you real quick, like anything
Very
college related. To answer your question, let's put a scope, because of course I'm over, undergrad is over, but I reminded people I had something called degree season, like graduation celebration. I had to remind people I did a lot in undergrad. Let's just recap real quick. All 4 years, from October 2016 to March of 2020 when the pandemic started, I held at least one type of leadership position on campus. I'm going to cut a promo
I
real
knew you
quick.
was
I
gonna
did
do
4
it.
years at SGA. 4 years at SGA. Every single summer, I had a computer science internship. I was a full-time member at my now former church. I was a youth leader for 2.5 years, and I was on their media team for 3 years. I was named in October of 2018 a Forbes Under 30 Scholar for the student section. Numerous awards, flying to Texas, California, North Carolina, competing for free. So I had to remind people, hey, so that's how I made my name Steven Season, which started in 2017. Now it's SZN Media. But I think I made my name at Morgan by just juggling everything. So to put a scope at that time, sophomore, junior year, I was full-time into SGA. Obviously advocating for the school on Twitter, stuff like that. I was covering at the time, wasn't working for athletics yet, but my sophomore year, I was covering football season and basketball season. For the HBCUs, we got double headers. So I'm covering a men's and women's game. On top of Sundays from 8:45 till basically 1, I'm at church. Wednesdays, most nights, I'm at Bible study for 2 to 3 hours. On top of in Monday night Senate meetings and stuff like that. So I just not to brag on myself. I wasn't obviously I was known, but I wasn't a super popular guy. But people had to respect me because I did so much.
Put
I
some
told my
respect
parents
on his name.
I told my parents I wasn't coming to Morgan State to play around. I wasn't coming to go to a party. I was coming to do business. It was a 4-year. I look at my time at Morgan and all my media passes I'm looking at on my wall. It was literally a 4-year business trip. I was there for business, and I made some great, amazing connections. But it was humbling my last 2 years. When people mention name Season at Morgan State between the years of 2018 and 2020, they're talking about me. I had people walking up to me, was like, "Hey, I saw your logo. Are you the Season guy?" I'm like, "Yeah, my name is Stephen Michael." "Oh, that's your name?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's my name." Because even kind of we're gonna go back and forth tonight. But jumping to my senior year, I was working for athletics. I was working for HBCU Game Day and an SB Nation website. So I was already covering the football season, both basketball seasons, and covering other athletic events. At that time, I was on the media team for my church. I was also doing SJ Media, really doing some trailblazing stuff on top of all those classes. So I had to put some scope and respect on my scope for the last 10 minutes. So how did I juggle it? I remember real, Brian, it was a struggle. I feel like computer science really kicked my butt, especially during my sophomore and junior year. But I think honestly, I handled it the best I can. I think the fact that I made it out proved I handled it well. But I think it was a hard juggle. And it honestly wasn't worth the schedule and the timings. Undergrad, I look at myself, I was like, how was I able to stay up till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, wake up at 8 and go to class at 9? Like, I don't know how I had all that energy, but I think I juggled it. It was really calendar. Everything, luckily for me, fell on a certain day of the week. I know basketball games, that was Saturday, Monday. Football, that was Saturday. Church, that was Sunday, Wednesday, whenever I had to go to church. Classes, obviously, that was anytime before 5. So I think I mastered the art of juggling and knowing priorities. But I
Now,
think really I had to take some L's in order to kind of get there though. I had to take some punches in the gut to really get that juggling mechanism correct, which is juggling everything that was on my plate.
wow. Now I gotta ask you this. You came in, you said that you told your parents you was going there for business. It was a business trip. Where did that come from? Where did that motivation come from? Because most of the time people come in as freshmen, what do they want to do? It's freedom. And it's a HBCU. I mean, you go in there, you got the bands, you got the ladies, you got the fellas that's you like-minded from other places. So that's an opportunity to learn new cultures. If you're a gamer now, y'all can sit there, play the game, and have Madden tournaments anytime you want. You don't have teachers breathing down your back. Where did that motivation come from?
Now, so I know I did have fun. I did, joked it up in the Refat Fried Chicken Wednesday, jolted up in the SJ office, talking to. Yeah, I had fun, but I think put a scope around my family perspective. I'm named after my dad, so I'm Stephen Michael Jr. He's Stephen Michael Sr. My dad didn't go to college.
Mm.
My mom had me when she was 19. She didn't get her degree until she was 41. I was in a family where I had a couple aunts with masters and PhDs, but no males, got past undergrad. So I had a big chip on my shoulder. My grandfather who passed away in 2009, and then my grandmother who passed away my junior year, they were big motivating factors. And also, I don't even know. This is a record, Brian. I did not mention this one thing I'm about to mention. It's like we're like 15 minutes in. I was raised in the church. So
Mhm.
obviously, I was raised in a big church family. Every Sunday was church. I think I was sheltered heavily until high school. So I think for me, my family, especially my parents, they knew I was going to be something special, but I didn't really show a lot of those qualities until late high school and I went to college. So funny about high school, my graduation, I was just over it. So when we was walking out, we was in the tunnel. Brian, I was the first person to walk out the tunnel, out of the arena into the parking lot during graduation. I said it to myself. I went to Central High School. Shout out to the Falcons, Capitol Heights, Maryland, Central Avenue. Y'all know what it is. PG County, period. Um, I was the first one who walked out. I said to my mom later that day, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go to Morgan. I wish I could pull up the photo. I think my freshman week still is in my archives, but I was wearing my SGA shirt from high school. I had Steve Mock on the back, and I said it like July, it was August when I moved. Me standing before the welcome bridge, me looking at Holmes Hall. I was like, Morgan State, I'm ready for you. And I didn't know what I was doing at the time because spiritually I wasn't really mature enough. Kind of moving forward a little bit more. I think freshman week, that July, no, that August, at night, Brian, I literally walked across campus for 30 minutes and prayed. I was like, God, use me. Now I didn't know what I was striking up, Brian, but I was what God used me. I want to be used as a vessel because I think at that time, I'm gonna be transparent. That was less than a year since my parents divorced. My parents divorced my senior year of high school, so I kind of had that and also some other family stuff going on. So I really had a lot of fire under me, but I learned at that time, and I learned really through undergrad. It's okay to have fire, but you got to learn how to channel it correctly. And I think I was very big into prove people wrong. There's a shirt brand there now closed called Prove People Wrong. I was really about, proving people wrong, shutting people up. But I think after my freshman year, because I remember even going back when I first chose Morgan, even some of my family was like, why are you going to Morgan? That was the year since Freddie Gray, everything was going. I'm like, what's wrong with Morgan? He was like, you going to HBCU? I'm like, yeah, like, well, okay, good luck. I was like, even some people from my high school. I remember one day I was on Twitter. So I remember I graduated from my high school, my freshman, my first semester. She tweeted, yeah, Morgan is the 13th grade. And I'm sitting here like, here's what y'all not going to
They
do.
always try to say that.
So between my dad, and it lets me a little bit real. I think out of all the people on this earth, the biggest outside of God, the biggest point of approval I want is for my dad. Anytime I do a big business venture, anytime I do something, I just want my dad to say, "Here, I did this." I remember when I first started writing, I was like, "Hey, Dad, I covered some articles." When I did the pro workout Morgan, I sent the photo. When I started my business, I'm like, "Hey," I remember even this past Christmas, outside of a couple other gifts I gave him a SZN Media hoodie.
Mhm.
Didn't think much of it. We went downstairs to play Uno. Brian, he came downstairs on my hoodie. My heart was touched. I'm like, wow, something I worked for, something I worked so hard for. My dad is wearing it. And of course, shout out to Stephanie Michelle, my sister. I have a 10-year-old sister. So my parents had a 12 and a half year gap between their first child and their second child.
Right.
So I have a sister walking around her school saying, "Oh yeah, my brother he goes to Morgan State." Like, so I think between my mom, my dad, my sister, and also now my close friends and my family, I just had so much motivation at the time. But I think the biggest thing spiritually and just as an adult, how to channel it and how to make it effective, that was really what I had to tackle.
Now, what kept you from going off the rails? Because you said you grew up in the church and you were sheltered. And as somebody, that's why I say you like about your my little brother because I was the same way. And my year, I would say it was 2009, 2010. I mean, and oh boy, when God keep you, because I was definitely straddling the fence. I was drinking and partying on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, going to church on Sunday, playing the drums. And sometimes, maybe after that was over. But what led you to like what kept you
Um, Shout out to my former church of Carbon House of Baltimore. I was in church. I think during my 4 years, every Sunday I was in Baltimore, I was in church. So I think my roots, I think my former church, they really, I was involved in youth ministry media team. I was always there. It was around the corner from Morgan. I could basically walk there. So I think them. But also I think really now that I look back at it like 7 months away since I've graduated, I think, God most definitely covered me at Morgan. Unfortunately, we lost a couple students at Morgan. We do something called a Promethean walk, and they're like, the people you're walking with right now, they are not going to be here. Some of them might not be here when you graduate. So as I saw people started to transfer, go back home, or not being able to handle college, of course I had my own struggles, which we're going to talk about. But I really think, it was really God. Like it was God.
Mhm.
I remember growing up, only reason I went to Baltimore growing up was to go to Moe's in downtown because my dad liked the seafood and go to church because I was just go to church services. So I think being able to be in a city where people had a lot to say, I just love Baltimore. But I think at the time when I was there, I just wanted to get to know Baltimore for myself. I think really it was God. Like, of course, freshman year, I went to maybe one or two parties, but after that, it wasn't really my scene. So yeah, I think most definitely God most definitely put people in my corner, but he gave me great friends and mentors to make sure. I remember even Corey Matthews sometimes taking me to Walmart. I had friends driving me places. I didn't have my car on campus, well, in Baltimore period until my junior year. So I think my first 2 years when I was just basically walking, Ubering, taking a shuttle, God most definitely put people around me to kind of look out and make sure I was good. So of course, that's a complicated question to answer because there's so many factors, but it was really church and God. I think I just couldn't stray away. I think at that time I found God for myself. I think my freshman year.
Mhm.
So I think once I kind of lit that fire and really, really got passionate about just my spiritual life and just my walk, everything else fell into place.
Now, you did a lot. And I want to talk about, some of your graphic design work because you found yourself working with local politicians. How did these opportunities come about? Because it seems like you created SZN Media, your LinkedIn says July 2019, but essentially you created it while you was in school, correct?
Yeah. So in high school, I was doing a bunch of Canva work. So I was running for let's talk about this. Let's talk about 2018 real quick. So 2018 was that was when my college career shifted from being a student leader to a full-time content creator. So I was running for Mr. Jr. Um, the graphic designer, he was like, yeah, I did some, you can do the rest. So he gave me his files. Brian, literally, I'm running in my most important election of all time. Obviously, I lost but this way God came in. I lost. But I literally taught myself Photoshop in the middle of an SGA election. Now, if you go to an HBCU, if you understand the pomp and circumstance of an HBCU election, that's like presidential election. It's real. So I was running for Mr. Jr. I obviously at the time I knew I was probably gonna lose, whatever. But I think graphics wise, I literally taught myself by hand. So I think boom. After I lost, I remember Bria Hill. She voted in as she's vice president. I texted her the day I lost. So the day I lost was real dramatic. I was in DC. I found out I lost via a live stream on Twitter. Would have been down. So I texted Bria. I was like, hey, I don't know what I want to do for SGA because I wanted to do 4 years of collegiate SGA stuff like that's a very big accomplishment for me. So she's like, yeah, I'm gonna need help with PR and media.
Hmm.
I was like, okay. My internship that summer, cool, whatever. I bought me a camera, July of 2018. So literally at that time, Brian, um, started doing graphics for my church, started doing graphics for SGA, started to do photography. Then to be a little bit, so you mentioned earlier about juggling everything. I got burnt my sophomore year. Computer science is kicking my butt. So Brian, I was at risk of using my scholarship,
Oh
but God
wow.
stepped in. They took
Now,
25%.
okay, where'd you get your scholarship from?
I was in an honors college.
Okay, cool.
And I
Yeah,
don't
me
look
too.
back, don't care about the honors college. I didn't need it. Thank you for paying my bills for those couple years. So
It's not on your they don't ask you that for job interviews.
they sure don't. They don't care about my GPA when I graduated. What's
I,
that? I'm
I, I
unemployed.
you know, I and we'll get to it. But I try to tell people that this is no by any means no disrespect to the 4.0 students out there. But I don't know if you heard the saying, A students teach and B students work for C students. Because especially in the production world, while most of the time the B students are just like stressing, and they just come up a little short. Those C students are focusing on the craft and they'll do the work. But I try to tell people all the time, shout out to Eric Dotson, the
Yes,
legendary
sir.
professor at Morgan State University. He told us, he said, ain't nobody asked me for my GPA. And he was and he might still be a general manager of Baltimore County Public Television. So of course I'm gonna listen to him. He's where I'm trying to get to. But go ahead.
So at that time, 2018 was very transformational because I was really fighting off. That was my first full year being independent as a writer. So I was fighting that off. So, like I said, I lost my scholarship. I lost 75% of my scholarship. So I remember coming in, walking into the SID's office, beginning to say, "Hey, what's up? How's everything? I'm trying to cover this year. Cool." He was like, who are you working for? I'm gonna mention that after this. So he's like, who are you working for? I was like, I'm working for a couple sites. Okay, cool. Put your student ID down. So Brian, I had a big gap. My parents was like, okay, Mike, get ready to chop up some money to pay off this bill. I was like, okay, cool. And at that time I was embarrassed because my sophomore year, I was have D's, F's. I was really just, and it wasn't honestly me, it was just really just the coursework and I just was realizing like IT and tech was not going to be my whole life. So I walked into this office. I gave him my student ID number, Brian. Tell me what I get home the next day. I get a call from financial aid. Yeah, you maxed out your financial aid because you got an athletic grant for $5,000. You're going to get a refund check.
Wow.
When I tell you, your boy cried, and I was at church Sunday giving God a good praise. So moving back, in July of 2018, I left Fox 1340.
Why did you
I
leave?
emailed. That's when everybody left. I was like the only person left. It was just really just me and Kelsey. And it was just really not, you know.
Okay.
So I didn't tell Glenn either. So I think it still was a mocker. I just didn't tell Glenn. So I sent 2 emails on the same day. I
Mm-hmm.
sent the email to HBCU Game Day, which is basically the top HBCU athletics sports site. And I sent an email to SB Nation's Mid-Major Madness to cover the smaller tier D1 basketball schools.
Mm-hmm.
Within the same hour, I got emails from both of them saying you can join. So literally, when I was embarrassed, this is about to get churchy. When I was embarrassed publicly in April 2018, because I got blown out in an SG election, God blessed me with money to keep me in school, 2 good websites to write for. Then that's when my brain started keeping up. I had my merch and everything. People knew who I was. I was a photographer. Then for SGA, for like 2 years, they won't admit it, but I pretty much carried that shit. Me and my boy CJ, what they do, what they got right now, it wasn't that seasoned experience, whatever. I was literally doing graphic social media content, some of the best social media graphic work on campus. So I literally got blessed with 2 media teams to work with, 2 websites to work with. And I'm basically getting paid to my academic bill to work for athletics.
Mm-hmm.
That's God.
Yep.
So when people ask me, how did you get, to where you were as a content creator? I think, God just aligned everything in order. So did that my junior year, did that my senior year. So my senior year, that's another testimony in itself. But just to kind of, when things kind of got a little bit better, this is too much for the pandemic. My former pastor, he was like, we got to think bigger in 2020. This is pre-COVID. I was like, okay, if you really go to a good Bible believing, good preaching church, you feel fired up after Sunday service.
Yeah.
So somebody random, some girl, she DM'd me, she's like, hey, I know somebody, he needs a graphic designer. I was like, okay, I need some money. Cool. Emailed him, and it was Senator Corey McRae, District 45. I still work for him. He's like, hey, Steven, let's meet at Zeke's Coffee on Hartford Road. I picked Sundays. We talked and I got it. But here's what was going down at that time, Brian. This happened a month after I realized I was not going to graduate on time.
Mhm.
I think it was the class calculus 2. I took that class 2 times and not pass it. So here's what was going on with that. So, um,
And because you're a math, computer science major, you got to take it.
I had to take. Here's the maths I took. I took pre-calc, calculus 2, differential equations, linear algebra, problem stats. Took like
Do you use them to this day?
hmm?
Do you still use them?
For some of like my mathematical stuff I do for work, yes, but really no. So I mentioned I had a good junior year. So my junior year, oh, unfortunately, my junior year was good, but I lost my grandmother in March of my junior year. And the reason why I say media means so much to me, because at that time I didn't know I was about to encounter, I'm gonna say, an 11-month battle with my mental health. I was just not good at all. So I lost my grandmother, Brian. Just guess what I had to cover that same week I lost my grandmother.
A MEAC tournament.
I had to go to my first MEAC tournament, Brian. So literally, she passed away. I think it was a Tuesday morning. By that Thursday night, by that Friday night, I think it was Thursday night. By that Thursday night, I was in the Norfolk Scope covering a MEAC game of HBCU game day. When I tell you at that time, I was just going through so much, recovering, grieving, but I was like, I'm literally covering what I want to cover. And I think, a lot of other people, they went to major D1 schools. But I think if you go to an HBCU, you cover an HBCU, you want to go to the conference tournament because it's like a party. It's a lot of people there. So I remember with my camera on the baseline, I was at the media table and I'm covering the MEAC tournament, but I'm grieving my grandmother. So when I tell you that spring break was the worst spring break ever, like I was just out of it. So couple weeks later, I still didn't have an internship. I got an email from a recruiter. She's like, "Hey, I'm from L'Oreal. Are you interested?" I was like, "Yes." So Brian, here's how God came in. When L'Oreal contacted me in April of 2019, their application was closed initially. I was like, emailed them, "Hey, can you send me a new link because the application is closed?" My quick tip point for you: just because a door looks closed does not mean God has closed it. Sometimes He can open. He's the only person with a key that can open up something that could shift your life.
Yeah.
So at a time when I was trying to finish a semester, because I didn't add that, my grandmother died in the middle of my midterm week. So I remember the next day taking a midterm. I cried during a midterm. I saw the tears hitting my paper, Brian. So I'm grieving at the time. I get the biggest opportunity ever. Fast forward to June, I got it. I walked into a room. On the right side, Brian, I see New York City. And I turn to my left, I'm walking. I see a room full of white people. I was like, "Oh my God, God, what are you doing?" And for added context, L'Oreal is the world's biggest beauty company. So I'm working IT as an intern for the world's biggest beauty company, while battling, grieving, and also this is the longest I've been away from home because I was in New Jersey. I was away from home for 3 months. So I got to an internship. They told me about the offer. Cool. So I get back home. So the last couple of weeks, my mom was like, of the summer, my mom was like, "What's up with Morgan? What's up with the honors college?" Because at that time, some things happened, but they were shifting over leadership. So Brian, guess what happened to my scholarship?
What happened?
So they took my scholarship and didn't tell me.
Ooh, HBCU Chronicles.
But here's where God came in. So the same way I tell my mom in the spring that God is going to work it out, I'm going to internship. I got my internship. I remember in that church those Sundays, I said I was praying hard. I was like, "God, you're going to make a way. I'm going to finish, do what I got to do." Mind you, that was the biggest internship I ever had. The money was great. And also, before I left, I found out that I was going to get an offer. So I came, a lot of people don't know, I came home from Baltimore that summer. I was like, "Yeah, I'm moving to New Jersey. I'm going to L'Oreal after I graduate." But I didn't have a scholarship at the time, Brian. So I prayed real hard. So I emailed Honors College on a Monday. It's like a Tuesday, whatever. And it was like, come to the Honors College office. So I told my teacher, hey, I got to leave class. I need to go fix my scholarship situation. Brian, when I tell you, I prayed the most powerful but quick 45-second prayer while walking madly through our campus. I walked in there, so hey, my name is Stephen Michael. I emailed you. It was like, oh yeah, we don't see you on the scholarship events, da. And it was a pause. She just looked at me. I said hello to you. I was like, hey, I'm just, I just want to know I'm just trying to graduate. And she paused. And she was like, okay, your scholarship's gonna be back in your account tomorrow.
Wow.
And also, I didn't even say that. So talking about the struggle, computer science was kicking my butt. Brian, for at least 3 to 4 semesters, they could have snatched that scholarship. Because I came into that year with a 2.9. They could have snatched my scholarship my sophomore year. But God was like, no. So I get the scholarship back. Then it's November, fast forward to November. Calculus 2 was kicking my behind. Mind you, I'm juggling everything I'm doing. So I talked to my teacher during office hours before my final. Big mistake. I should have talked to him pre-midterms. But God was trying to get something out of me. And he was like, yeah, you basically got to get at least a 95 tomorrow to pass. I'm like, this is not about to happen. I moved to the parking lot, cried. I called my dad. I'm like, listen, I'm not graduating on time. My dad was like, okay, cool, work it out, cool. I called my mom. She went off. So I will always forget this moment. So I have a phrase called "My God is undefeated" because He's undefeated. I was wearing my original hoodie. It was I still have it. It's a burgundy "My God is undefeated" hoodie. So I was emotional. I was hurt. Called some people. So I really texted 7 of my friends, just pray. Don't know what's going on. So I walk into the computer science office. Her name is Miss Wendy Smith. She's like our administrator because all of our teachers there were foreign. So she black. She looked out for the homies. Side note, when I tell you she signed so many override forms so I can graduate when I graduated, shout out to her. So I was crying. She's like, Steven. She basically told me like, shut up. It's like, be quiet. I was like, what? She's like, look at your hoodie. I looked down at my hoodie. My hoodie said, my God is undefeated. She was like, Steven, how are you wearing this hoodie? But you're over here shook on what's going to happen. So she was like, get it together. Wipe your tears, go home, take a nap. So remember that Sunday was just, and I cried in front of my whole church. I'm not graduating on time. But I said in that moment, I said, but God is going to work it out. So at that time, Brian, I thought I was going to actually finish my last classes in December of 2020. One of my friends, Tyrell, he was like, Steven, the 2 classes you need, because I needed to pass calculus 2 to get to my final 2 math classes.
Yeah.
So he was like, oh, the 2 classes you need are in the first summer semester, which means I could have started my job on time. Everything would have been fine. So I took calculus 2 again in the winter. I didn't pass it again. I missed it by like 4 points. I called my mom. She nearly cursed me out. My dad was like, Mike, just keep going. So at that current moment between March and that time, I was being tested. So one more thing happened. So back at the semester, some people left my life. And I'm just struggling, Brian, because I was so embarrassed. Because, this is pre-pandemic. This is February, January of 2020. May was 2020 was right there.
Yeah.
And I was hurt for like 2 months. So I went to New Orleans for a journalism conference. I don't know why I was there. So, but it turned into more of an encounter with me and God. So I remember it was one night I was looking over, downtown New Orleans in the Marriott. And I said to God, I'm like, listen, I need some stuff out of you that I just need to make happen. At that time, it was nearly midterm week. I was failing 2 of my classes. I was like, I was at really thinking at the time, bro, I don't know if I'm gonna graduate because it was just so hard. So I prayed real hard, like prayed. I think I had like a couple hours praying, crying, like, listen, I need this. I need my business to expand. I need to graduate. I need to start my job on time. So, Brian, guess what happened? Right when I got back home from New Orleans.
What?
The pandemic. Literally that next week.
Wow.
It was I took one. So You want to know what I did my last time in class in person? I failed the midterm. So I remember it was a midterm where nobody knew what was going on in the class. I think majority of the class failed.
Mm-hmm.
I remember turning in a paper, basically empty. Now, pause. I know you're sitting in this podcast and you're like, you were a bad student. Okay. I was a good student. Computer science was just hard. I got most of A's and B's on my transcript. Relax. God was trying to get something out of me. All right, back to my testimony time. All right. So I remember going home the next day. It was Tuesday, and Morgan was like, yeah, we're canceling midterms, and spring break is going to be 2.5 weeks. I was like, what is going on? But I realized, Brian, I had a personal pandemic before the actual pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much, God was testing me to see if I can last through this next season before the next season happens.
Yeah, because he knew what was coming.
It was interesting. My former pastor, he said it when I was crying in his office in December. He was like, Mike, don't worry about your offer. You're going to start on time because something's going to happen that's going to make everything okay. Now, they make everything okay, but in happenstance, so pandemic happens. I had my business, SZN Media, and Brian, I'm going to be real with you. My senior year until pre-pandemic, I was broke. I remember December and January, someone at my church, she was the manager of the Job Roll Pizza Hut in Towson. A lot of people don't know. December and maybe majority January to make ends meet. I was working at Pizza Hut. Mind you, I had a good salaried job offer on the line. I had the business, but I think at that time God was like, you need to fully trust in me and fully operate in my ways for you to get where you need to get. I feel like for so long, Brian, up to that moment, I was operating off of talent because I was a talented person. I think I was doing everything, but I was like, am I really doing what God needs me to do? So I was working at Pizza Hut. So I remember one day before no New Orleans, I was like, yeah, I need to leave. And she was like, yeah, I get it. You're going on, but I told her thank you. So I moved on with the New Orleans. I came back. So when I came back from New Orleans, the pandemic started. I revamped my business. I switched my business name from SZN Media to SZN Media. I shot a commercial. I got an invoice system. I redid my website. And ever since last March, it's almost been a year, God has most definitely been blessing me, period. I think, I remember when I think it was May 15th when I was supposed to graduate on time. May 15th came and people said to my phone, I think you text me too, hey, happy graduation. Not a lot of people didn't know that I wasn't graduating on that day. I was hurt. But it's interesting. This is how God works. It is what it is. I'm almost a year up in there. So, Brian, I technically started my job before I was even a graduate. This is how God works. So during that time when I was struggling, I had to talk to my company because I was embarrassed. So I finally get on the phone with them. I was like, yeah, he's going, okay, cool. Can you still start? Cool, great. So I was starting my summer semester classes beginning of June. I just had a month of classes. When I started my job on June 29th, the next week I had finals. So literally in my mom's basement in the pandemic, I started my career in tech, but I finished my undergrad career at the same desk, same basement. So what did I get at? God was trying to say, hey, everything will always fall in line. No matter what happens, it will fall in line. And you might not understand how it's going to happen or the circumstances, but it's going to happen.
Yeah. I want to take a quick minute to talk about mental health. As you all know, we are living in unprecedented times, whether it's the racial pandemic or the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, I want to introduce you to Hope Again Counseling Services, where transformation begins. Hope Again provides help for children, adolescents, adults, family, and couples. So give them a call at 410-698-8442 or visit them on the web at yourhopeagain.com to book your appointment. If you are willing to believe, you will begin to achieve, and ultimately, Hope Again Counseling Services can help you receive all that is meant for you. Now, did you, when you, because you went back to L'Oreal, how was that making that transition from intern to employee, did you know somebody or was it a totally different department?
Same different team. I knew a couple of people. Also, here's the thing: it was the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
so I knew L'Oreal as from the standpoint of in person, but I came back and different world.
Okay.
So I think I'm doing great. I started okay, but it was weird because everybody was on phone calls. It was hard to reach people just because it was different. Like everybody's schedule was full. So I think I have to commend myself as I'm almost a year into post undergrad life. I have to commend myself the fact that I was able to start my career and also still focus on my business at the same time. And it's such a crazy because last summer was just so heated.
Yeah.
It was literally so much going on for me. It was like between being angry about social justice, trying to graduate, starting my job, preparing. I moved in August. So within a month and a half between end of June and beginning of August, I graduated, celebrated my graduation, started my job, and moved.
Wow. In
But
the
you
middle of
see,
two pandemics.
God tested me for all this stuff happening. He's like, "Hey, you trust me?" I was like, "Yeah." God made everything fall in line, even when the lines of what we thought was normal was not straight.
Hmm.
So when I mean about that phrase, "My God is undefeated," I don't play around about it.
Now, when you look back, um, what was your glass breaking moment? What was the moment you broke through the glass ceiling?
Um, it's two answers to that. Number one, spiritually, I led something called on campus the Unity Prayer Walk. So I was sitting at my desk as an intern in DC at the USDA. That was my sophomore year internship going to my junior year. I tweeted one day, I want to see more of God's presence on Morgan's campus. As you know, Morgan was founded as a seminary first, before it was founded in the base of a church. So I tweeted it, and a couple days later, here's where my graphic design skills came in. Now, when I look at it, the fryer was pure garbage. I don't know what I was doing. Colors wasn't, whatever. So I did a graphic, and I was like, the day before we come to school that Sunday, we're going to go on camp. We're going to walk from the student center to the quad, and we're going to pray. Then I was like, here's my marketing came in. I'm like, oh, if I give organizations a flyer with their logo and their colors, more people will be attracted. So it went from shout out to NCW, that was my first supporters. It went from NCW to Greek organ. So Brian, I literally, and I didn't even have permission. I got permission like a couple days before. I literally had over 200 people come to Morgan's Quad before the semester started to pray in unison. But mind you, that was my 2018 year. That was the year when I kind of realized student leadership and tech is not going to be really my life fully. That was less than a month since I got my camera. That was less than a month and I got those two positions. That was literally the same week I got that athletic position.
Hmm.
Mind you, that was 2 months after I got 25% of my scholarship taken away. I think that spiritual moment right there, me being bold enough about my beliefs, because people know sometimes I push it. We all know I might be preaching someday. I'm more of a testimony person. But people's all, yeah, Stevie, you just church, you raised in the church. People used to call me bishop. I was like, I just want to serve. So spiritually, and I did it 3 times. I did it spring of 2018, also spring of 2019, fall of 2019. But that first moment where I saw my spiritual life and my media skills come together to make something so powerful and distinct. Because at a public university, you're really not supposed to be having, religious events in the open like that.
Hmm.
So I broke the glass ceiling at Morgan. Although I lost an election that year, God was like, okay, this is a pivot. I'm gonna pivot you to something better. He pivoted to me from that to using my media skills to bring seasons to life. And I think number two, when I really broke the glass ceiling, I'm gonna say 2020.
Okay.
I think, in spring of 2020, I stopped sports writing. I left the two websites I was writing for. I obviously athletic stopped because, the year was over. I think once I got serious about my business and I started making real legitimate money for my business and I really started to get good promo and to get good clients, that's when I realized I broke the ceiling. I have my degree. People told me you're not going to juggle computer science and media. I got my degree. If you notice between Fox, game day, everything I was doing, God gave me skills for 3 to 4 years in undergrad that is literally pushing me in every area between this new church role I have, my business, or everything that I'm doing within my business season media. God gave you those gems for
Mhm.
3 to 4 years.
Wow. So now, like, real quick before we get out of here, your podcast, which I had the honor, pleasure of being on. Um, One, how do you balance it? But where did you decide that was something that you wanted to do? Because obviously, you know, podcasting isn't always easy, as you know. Everybody seems to want to do it. I even think once the pandemic is over, I'm wondering how many podcasts will still be around. But you've been able to maintain a consistency because you set it up in different seasons with themes. What got you into the podcast side?
So actually, I had this idea, but I just had the funding to do it. So my sophomore year, I had a blog called The Pulse of the Season. Didn't keep up with it because obviously I was working for Fox. Had me busy, Mr. Waters. And I did a video. I remember Isaiah George. I did a video about Jamel Hill and ESPN. I did like a 10-minute video. But his thing, always had the idea of something called Pulse of the Season. Couldn't connect the dots. So when the pandemic started, I was like, oh, if I'm not doing content for sports, let me do a podcast. And I started. So the whole base of my podcast, 11 episodes, 11 stories, one topic. 11 because I was born in 11 November 11, 1997. And I wanted to do one season, each new topic, because I think I'm known for being well versed between student leadership, church life, social life, sports life, corporate life. I'm very fluent at LinkedIn. I can get a good pop on LinkedIn. Sign it, a pop is a crowd reaction or noise. That's another wrestling term. I can get a good, reaction out of people. So I think my current podcast, Black Women in Sports Media, I'm very passionate about that because you got to support Black women. But also I think my podcast is unique because I can stop it at any time
Mhm.
and keep it going. I think I told myself I'm not going to do a consistent podcast where I'm going to do something that's based on real life topics. I'm gonna kind of give, like right now, I'm gonna give somebody the opportunity to tell their story on a theme and kind of just do storytelling. I realized when I started writing in sports media, I just wanted to tell stories and have a genuine platform to make content. I'm at a phase where sign up, you're gonna pay this invoice, sign its contract. Outside of the business side of content, I'm at a space where I understand my role in content and I understand what I'm good at and what I'm passionate about. I admit I kind of struggle, not my last year, but my first 2 years on Morgan, I struggled from imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
I was kind of sad that I couldn't go to NABJ because it was always landing on my last week of my internship where I had presentations. I was kind of getting some slack. Oh, you're a blogger. Yeah, you don't. Yeah, you're not an SGJC. But here's what. So I went from taking hits my first 2 years and not even getting media passes to when it comes to SGA and any important event on Morgan's campus. I was either doing the photos for it or y'all saw my flyers. Then any athletic event my last 2 years on Morgan, I was there. So I think the premise here is at the end of the day, God will put your steps in order, but it's your job to walk in it.
Mhm.
And it's also your job to ignore people who might not understand the steps you are walking in.
Amen. Amen. So, before we get out of here, man, let the people know where they can find you. I mean, you've been obviously an inspiration. I'm pretty sure people gonna want to stay connected.
Yeah, so kind of ending my social media hiatus, got some good stuff coming up, but you can follow me at Twitter at SZN Season CEO, on Twitter, Instagram at season.ceo. If you're professional, go to LinkedIn, Stephen Michael Thompson Jr. You can go to book me and also see my work on seasonmedia.co for my business, of course. And my podcast is also on seasonmedia.co. But if you want to listen to the Pulse Season podcast, you go to Spotify, Apple Music, and Anchor. And I do have some amazing stuff coming up. So stay tuned to my personal pages and find that out in a couple weeks. But that's how you can find me. Obviously, I'm not writing for any websites right now. So a lot of my content outside of my clients' content is either through Senator Corey McCray on Facebook and Instagram. That's where a lot of my graphics are right now. And the Pulse of the Season podcast. So that's pretty much where you can find me. I'm very social. I love to interact with people, love to collaborate. So if you're trying to collaborate with me, just let me know. You can email me at SZN Media@gmail.com and we could chat it up.
All right, bro. I'm so proud of you, as I said time and time again, and I say it publicly, man. You know, continue to let God use you, man. And I appreciate you coming on.
Appreciate it, balls. I hope you got your sermon full. I think that's actually for this. Yeah, I'm gonna just go just drop a sermon. I don't. This is the only way I know how to do it at this point. It's just this is the only way I know how to do it. So appreciate you. No, I appreciate you. Before we go, I really appreciate you. You gave me my first ever opportunity in media outside of the lens of Morgan State. And I think we talked about social media one time, and I balloons. I think the fact that we was able to have conversations, and a lot of the things you taught me or things you introduced me to are kind of paying my bills. I appreciate you. So
Hey, man,
I'll
it's
tell you
all
this like
about
once a
giving
month,
back.
but yeah,
It's about giving back. So one day somebody gonna come up to you, and you gonna have a bunch of mentees, and you're gonna be like, "Well, this is what you do," and then you're gonna be getting on them when they mess up, and because it's all love. I always credit my mentors, Sam Davis, Jerry Bembry, Dwayne Wickham, Kevin Richardson. Then if I go into my work world, Dr. Audrey Wong, Marin Hadid, those are people who've kind of helped me get in the positions that I'm in. So mentorship is important. It's definitely something I enjoy.
can I shout out some people myself?
Go ahead.
Can I? You gonna cut a promo on me? Okay, cool. I'm gonna go. Shout out to anybody who supported me at Morgan State. My business started there. My brand started there. Tremont Lucas, he came up with it was a joke. It was Stevens, and that was like a whole brand. Shout out to Tremont. Shout out to everybody I talked to in SUJC. Shout out to sometimes they irritate me, but shout out to Morgan State SGA. Shout out to Ms. Williams. Shout out to Mr. Moloch. Shout out to Dr. Dillon, my advisor, Ms. Wendy. Shout out to everybody at Morgan. Shout out to Stephen J. Gaither at HBCU Game Day. Russell Steinberg at SB Nation Major Madness. Shout out to Glenn for giving me opportunity when I was so young. Also, shout out to all of my clients, anybody who listens to my podcast. And most importantly, shout out to my close friends and the family, my parents. I know, especially my last 2.5 years undergrad, I drove them crazy. I was like, Mike, if you want to go sit down somewhere and do your homework, I was doing my homework. I'm a bad test taker. Also, shout out to my little sister, Stephanie Michelle. And most importantly, shout out to God, because without him, I am nothing. And turn to your neighbor and say he's undefeated. All right, I'm done, Brian. I'm not trying. I'm done. I'm just very churchy. It's very full sometimes.
Thompson has taken us to church. So I appreciate you, bro.
Yes, sir.
All right, so Lil Bro took us to church this week. Hope y'all enjoyed that conversation that I had with the one and only Stephen Michael Thompson Jr. Next week, I bring on, let me say, my bloodline, my newfound family member, or we just gonna go ahead and claim it, as nothing has been officially figured out yet, and that's the one and only Britt Waters. Britt is a multi-talented radio host, producer, show host. She has her own wrestling opinion. Yes, I mean, it runs in the family, right? So make sure y'all tune into that next week, folks. I promise you will not want to miss it. And remember, folks, do not let anyone set up a ceiling that you can't break through. Make sure you guys subscribe to the podcast. This podcast is brought to you by B Waters Productions. You can follow B Waters Productions on all social media platforms. And the music is produced by Hypno Beats. Follow on Instagram at Hypno_Beats with a Z.